urbanization is increasing, we do feel that urban population is creating more ruckus when it comes to biodiversity loss because we are removing the forest cover. However, the unsustainable agricultural practices in the villages are also leading to biodiversity loss and loss of insects and uh, especially the arthropods who are very important for carrying out pollination. Is it something that we are leaving behind and not discussing, or is it actually the truth?
Yes, basically all those activities which we have been doing in our daily routine is affecting biodiversity in one way or the other. And we have to understand first uh, that what are the issues and why biodiversity is important to us and why we are talking about the biodiversity at this platform. So as you have correctly pointed out, that it is the villages, it is the urban population, both of them are basically doing their bit, and in doing so, they are affecting biodiversity in one way or the other. But what is important is to understand that how this biodiversity is linked with the existence and welfare of human society. And I would like to emphasize upon that during last several years, last several decades rather, it has been established that whether it is a terrestrial ecosystem or the aquatic ecosystem, the biodiversity provides a range of ecosystem services. And these ecosystem services can be categorized into several ways. And it provides basically like services like food provisioning, water, its purification, habitat provisioning, erosion and flood control, pollution control, nutrient cycle. So all is a whole host of things which are basically provided by biodiversity. Now, whenever we are extracting anything out of that, it is impacting. And that has been understood over last many years, that the influence can be detrimental to the conservation or to the biodiversity, because all those activities are affecting one way or the other the economy, health, and culture, social and political systems. So as you have rightly said, that people are basically respecting biodiversity through touching earth, through giving respect to Tulsi or likewise. So there are a host number of things which are connected to our religious beliefs or cultural ethos. That is why the being second largest in the world, still we have a lot of biodiversity. That is the positive note. And the other thing is that certainly unsustainable use of natural resources is making or is taking heavy toll, and it is coming in the form of several adverse impacts like prolonged droughts, rainfall, disturbed rainfall system, flooding, untimely rains. All that are the manifestation of those over exploitation of the resources.
Yes.
Yes.
So with this, we would like to come to the second question, which is actually the agenda of this program, is what do you actually understand and what would you like to tell about mainstreaming biodiversity and the relevance with sustainable development goals that have just been decided on international scale?
Okay. Emphasizing on the the role of biodiversity in, for the human society, I would say that we have understood over last several decades that how the human activity is impacting biodiversity in an adverse way. Now, after doing that, we have tried to launch several programs or emphasized that management and conservation of biodiversity should be through direct actions like increasing green cover, reducing harmful emissions, conserving water resources. We have emphasized upon education and awareness programs, but in now post 2020 biodiversity framework has come up, which emphasizes the mainstreaming of biodiversity. So we have to understand what is mainstreaming of biodiversity. If I go by the definition, it is simply integrating or including actions related to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity at every stage of policy, plan, program, and project cycle. But it is difficult to understand in this format. Therefore, this can be explained with an example here linked with sustainable development. And as you know, that the agenda at international level set and says there are 17 goals for sustainable development. So I'll take an example of among those goals and then try to explain what we mean by mainstreaming biodiversity. So one of the goals is affordable and clean energy for all. Now the question is, why clean energy? And what is clean energy? Clean energy because the conventional energy adversely impacts biodiversity. Therefore, we are opting for a clean energy. And hence, at the national level, there has to be a policy for promotion of clean energy to reduce impact of biodiversity. So now, how policies are framed vis-a-vis the conservation of biodiversity. So agenda or goal, sustainable goal is providing affordable and clean energy. And in response, the countries have to make policy framework where the clean energy has to be promoted to reduce the impact of biodiversity. Once that is done, the next step is basically the funding of energy projects. Here the financial institutions come into picture, and financial institutions have to make adjustments in terms of providing incentives to clean energy projects over the conventional ones. Now, you see the policy from the government, decision making at the government level for having a policy for clean energy or energy. Now, the financial institution has come into play where you are basically advancing the agenda of biodiversity conservation and imbibing it into the financial institutions. Then third level is where the clean energy project has to be selected or has to be framed. At this stage, it must be ensured that the project should have minimum or no impact on ecosystem or biodiversity, which means wherever we are basically having this project, that should not adversely impact. means selection of site, having a project design itself has or have to have a concern about the biodiversity conservation. So at that third level also, the biodiversity conservation is coming into play for making decision, for designing the project, and for implementing it. The next step is the execution of the project. Now, at this stage, what is required to be seen is the social, cultural, and economic considerations. Means the project must be inclusive. There should be opportunities to the locals, thus raising their income level and contributing to poverty alleviation. You have started with a policy, then you are coming to the several stages and coming to the ground where people are involved in biodiversity. And that is exactly the meaning of biodiversity mainstream. Means it has to be included or it has to be inducted at every level of planning, execution, and policy making. That is the mainstream.
And
And
sir,
now
with
this mainstreaming of when we are doing the mainstreaming, it is basically achieving the goal of sustainable development. With this example, as I have just explained. Yes.
So with this, I'd like to just add on to, this is a sub question of the first question. Then in this, at the same time, we are celebrating the fact that we are second largest in population and yet having the biggest biodiversity cover, but destruction is actually happening on daily basis. So with that, what are the key measures for conserving natural resources and wildlife, and at the same time have a developmental attitude?
Oh, Shruti, that's a very wide question.
Yes, that's a wide question.
Yes, it is a very big question, and it can be dealt at every level, different levels. There are actually 100 ways, more than 100 ways for conserving natural resources, including wildlife.
But one of the things that comes to my mind is definitely through including culture, including communities.
Yeah,
that's a
what
very
I would say, I would categorize it that it should be looked at three different levels. One is the individual's level. The action of an individual, a responsible person, action at community level, an action at institutional level, and action at governmental levels. So this action for conserving biodiversity must start at the individual's level. Why I say this? Because a very small beginning can lead to a big difference. Do you know how much cooked food we waste every day? It is about, on an average, 1 kg per person per day. Which means we can feed this world every day through the responsible behavior and food habit.
Absolutely.
Yes. So it is a very small initiative that we should not waste.
Of course, food habits is one of the talk of the town, and yes,
this is
how basically we consume. How basically you consume,
how much you consume, how much you throw away. And it has got cultural relevance also, because in some part of the country I know that the amount of food cooked per person is more than what it can ever consume in a single meal. Like in one of the area, it is more than 2.5 kg. When they cook something like 2.5 kg. Okay, so you have certain examples, like I give you an example, another example of leaking water tap, drip by drip. 10,000 liters can be wasted by one tap in a year.
Absolutely. That's actually a concern.
That actually is the concern. So
Okay.
similarly is the case with paper, electricity, plastic bags, and everything which we use in daily life.
Micro
We just
habits
throw
of
them.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, we just throw them.
Okay.
So if we
Great.
control that,
Hmm.
if we have a responsible behavior, that is
Hmm.
something which will make the society, government, national, international level, I mean, like a big difference. Because then you don't need very big laws, elaborated laws, if you are a responsible person. So if we do our bit, even small things that take care of leaking tap, take care of the electricity switches when we switch
Yes.
off the electricity, and not small things. But that has got a very large impact,
Very large impact.
very large impact. As I give
Uh,
you an example, uh, uh, if time permits, okay, I can give you just
actually,
little example that when you are wasting food, there is a cycle, of events which starts. You need more landfills. You need more. You have more emissions of gases, uh, greenhouse gases. You need more. You are having a more pressure on to the land for more production, more fertilizer, more water. So just one event of having or the food requirement can make a lot of difference. That all these sectors are influenced. Your economy is influenced, your culture is influenced, your habits are influenced. So that we will have to take care.
okay. Absolutely. Everything is taken.
Yes. So
Basically,
the individual level
micro
is
habits will
one.
create macro economy. And with this, we would. Do we have questions for Dr. Afifullah?
We can take the questions at the end of the session since we are running short of time.
Okay, so
And
with this, I would like to invite our second speaker, Mr. Dr. Hishmi Jamil Hussain, and we would like to hear his views on the said topic. So, sir, my question would be to you if you could elaborate on multi-level institutional policy frameworks that govern biodiversity laws in India, and to what extent these policies incorporate SDG goals 14 and 15. And in addition to this, if you could also answer me, since you're from the corporate background, how this latest trend of ESG reporting uh, is coming up. Is it just merely another compliance, or is it something that is actually going to create an impact when it comes to impact financing?
Thank you, Sukriti. Thank you, Ispera. And I am happy to be the part of this August panel. So first of all, just try to understand that how this journey of from Millennium Development Goal to the Sustainable Development Goals are helping to the world. So as you asked, how the corporates are now taking the ESG reporting. So just I want to tell that some research has been done, and when these SDGs and the 17 SDGs has been rolled out, and in the research it was found that 89% of corporate feel that SDGs are very important. The difference between the Millennium Development Goal and the SDGs was Millennium Development Goal 8, and there were 17. And the other of the SDGs that has been built by taking the consensus, stakeholders consultation, and Agenda 2030, because we want to achieve these goals by 2030. So this is something that we have a Millennium Development Goal 7, which is talk about the environmental sustainability. But here we are having two very peculiar sustainable development goal directly related with the biodiversity. This was the SDG 14 and 15, life below water and life above water. So I was telling that how the CEO of the company has been observed about these SDGs. They feel that it is essential that if we will having such kind of reporting mechanism, that will help the business, because everyone is talking about growth of a business in a sustainable way. After the COP26, after the IPCC 6 report, now we know that whatever we are doing, we are not going to control the global temperature, which is increasing. So we need to bring the decarbonization. We need to heavily invest on the nature-based solution. We need to align all the stakeholders. It is not just the governments are responsible. It is the businesses are responsible. It is the NGOs are responsible. And every individual who want to provide a good future for the generation, he need to be consciously take some decision. Just I want to give you some of the statistics which can help the viewers and the listeners to understand that why the whole world is talking about the biodiversity. We are losing about 88,000 square kilometer of a forest. We are losing about more than 36% of the pollinators, and pollinators are very important for our
Yes, absolutely.
security. We have lost about 85% of our water bodies in last 300 years. These are very important. These are the kidney for the Mother Earth. Now try to understand and correlate. We cannot survive without our lungs, without our kidney. That's why the whole world is talking about biodiversity conservation. Now I'm coming to the business. You see that 10,000 years before, human beings were covering only 1% of the Mother Earth, and 99% was covering by the wildlife. Now what is happening that this 1% has reached to the 32%, and the 67% is covered by the cattle, and only 1% is now covered by the wildlife. And this is the reason of pandemic like COVID-19.
Absolutely.
So many of the emergencies, the climate emergency is knocking us. The biodiversity collapse is also on the doorstep. We are just about to start the sixth great mass extinction. You perhaps know that the first mass extinction has happened about 443 million years ago, when more than 85% species has been lost. The last has happened, the fifth one, and now about 1 million species are about to extinct. So with that all, now you can consider that how much important this is for the individual, for the corporates. And if the corporate want to have a sustainable growth, they need to think about decarbonization. They need to work around the nature-based solution. They need to believe and work with the partnership. Now I want to add another very important aspect, which many of us are not talking. The mapping of these SDGs. These 17 SDGs are very important. Until and unless we are mapping them with our action and with our target, we will not able to achieve it. The legislation in India, CBD, I think my other colleague will talk more about the ACHI target. So based on the CBD in 2002, we were having the Biological Conservation Act. Under that, we have established the National Biodiversity Authority. We have established the Biodiversity Board. So there is a lot of work has been done on that benefit sharing, conservation of the resources. But until and unless people will know about this target and how they can contribute it. So we have done the mapping of each of the target, that how this each target we are aligning with our business imperative. It is also important that whatever we are doing, it must having the benefit or the imperative so the society, the business, the people can benefit it. We are organizing this session, so definitely the expectation is that we must having some of a consolidated roadmap or the way forward, so we can contribute about conservation. We can talk about the strategy. We can talk about how we can align our plans so we can conserve the biodiversity. I hope I am able to explain your question.
Yes, so sir, since it was not mentioned in the agenda, since I also kind of come from corporate environment kind of amalgamation, because I do not completely believe in I believe in conscious capitalism. So ESG is one of the most beautiful things that is happening in the corporate domains today. And but then before ESG also, we used to have environmental impact assessments. But that was done by the central governments, and forest clearance के लिए we had state departments. So compliances तो होते थे पहले भी, but at the same time ESG, now all the foreign investors are looking at ESG reports, even though it's not a statutory compliance today. But today I'm seeing that even tax consultants and general consultants are trying to become ESG consultants. So is it going to another dimension of becoming a corporate career, or is it really going to have an impact? And do we have a mapping structure, proper mapping structure of impact assessment? Because according to my understanding, there are no parts in nature. There is a butterfly effect that happens in another nation when the flapping of wings takes place in South America. So how can we imagine the impact it can have on any elements when we do not have a proper structure at place? If you can just elaborate on that.
So I just want to explain that for sustainability, these are the three very, very important aspects. We must having the environment, we must having the economy, we must having the community. So now the jargons are every time
Absolutely.
changes when the discipline, these definition schemes. Now we are talking about the people, planet, and profit. Now this ESG is something that definitely, which is having a measuring, that you are having a qualitative and quantitative approach. So first, you perhaps know that the DJSI, the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, has started. They are having this set of questions which are directly explaining, or they are collecting information that how you are dealing with your communities, how you are dealing with your employees, how you are dealing with your governance structure, how you are dealing with your environmental performance. In the environment performance, how you are consuming the water, how you are conserving the biodiversity. So all this long list of the principles are there.
Okay.
If I talk about the sustainable mining principles, so there are again 10 principles, and you need to again put all these boxes together, and you perhaps see that the ESG ratings are giving the qualitative and the quantitative assessment of the corporates. So there is a massive, massive pressure from the investors. They want to know that your product is sustainable, that you have evaluated on the life cycle assessment. If I'm saying that I need an investment of $200 million, first question they will ask that what is my decarbonization plan? If I'm approaching to the IMF, if I'm talking about any of the big investor, the World Bank, they will ask me whether I am having a biodiversity management plan, whether I am having a position of Chief Sustainability Officer, whether I am having a position of Principal Advisor on Biodiversity. So these are the key positions earlier not reflecting in any organization. But now what is happening that when I am talking about uh, the SF6, this is one of the important aspect where you must having evaluate your impact on the biodiversity. In India, we are having very stringent legislation, the environment impact assessment, the forest diversion. So these are the truths. Without approaching, without taking them, you cannot work. So legal compliance is now for the international. We are now in a global village. So if I want to grow my business, if I want to export my items, I must having a green label. And I cannot achieve the green labeling until and unless my ESG ratings are good. The other very good example I want to give you that this ESG ratings are again giving a systematic approach to achieve the net neutrality. So right now I'm having my carbon emission X. I need to have a long-term plan, medium-term plan, and a short-term plan. Then only I can have the new technology intervention. Then only I can have a competition. Recently, the EU has put the carbon tax. So similar kind of more taxes, more benefit people will get if they are having a better ESG rating. So it is not just a eyewash if people are feeling that it is something that which has been done in the past. No, now the people are having a better awareness. Now, because of this social media, because of all this interaction, we know what is happening in Europe, we know what is happening in China, what is happening in Sri Lanka. So now everyone is having the eye on such kind of the economic risk. People are having the understanding about the human rights. So if the human rights violations are there, you will not find the investors. If there is a civil wars, or if there is the rights, you will not find the investors for your business. You cannot give or sell your product in international markets. And ESG ratings are giving clearly these indications for your product and services.
Absolutely. I think that's quite extensive, and that clearly answered. That's actually a holistic answer. basically whatever is in our control is to manage certain things. We need to do that. Otherwise, butterfly effect can happen anywhere. So with this, since there's perplexity of time and you have to leave early also, another 2-3 minutes, won't take much time of yours. Just the last question. How important do you think is collaborative effort and public-private partnerships or strategic partnerships useful, or is it just some jargon, or it's actually something that is useful? We can do something on our own, or we really need partnerships on that scale?
So if it is a jargon, it will not be as a Sustainable Development Goal 17. So this is exclusively talked about the partnerships. So we are having a panel of this. Some are the wildlife experts, some are the water experts, some are having some knowledge about the corporate, some are having a knowledge about the civil society. So considering all the perspective, considering all the understanding, we can bring a sustainable plan. So I just want to give you one example that I may be very good in a one aspect, but for another aspect, I need some other person to guide me. I could be very good in presentation skill, but for the knowledge partnership, I need to have a collaboration with the institute like Wildlife Institute of India or Aligarh Muslim University or IIT. So these are the knowledge partners. They are the academicians who have spent their 20 year or 30 year only for conservation or evaluating something. As a corporate, I can give my experience that how you can implement it, how you can make a business model. As a civil society, you can take the help that how you can socialize among the people, because sustainability, biodiversity conservation, climate action, that cannot be achieved by the single party or single person, single agenda. The United Nations, there are 193 countries have signed on the SDGs pledge. For this COP26, more than 200 countries have taken the pledge. More than 50 countries have already have signed to achieve the net neutrality, IPCC. So there is a group of people. Without collaboration, we cannot achieve anything. So collaboration, partnership, engagements are very important for the progress and success of any of the program. I think there is some technical issue.
Yeah, so my internet just went off. Actually, it's raining here, so sorry. But I heard your answer. So
Thank you, Sukriti, and I will be happy if you are having any question. You can contact me. I will drop my email ID also in the chat box. So
yes, sir. Please do that, because I'm sure all the panelists would be very interested to have your views on practical ground realities of how to safeguard biodiversity. So please drop your email.
2-3 minutes are remaining, so just I want to tell some of the things we have done. So we have started a partnership with IUCN in 2013. So now try to understand that as a corporate, we definitely need help from the organization like IUCN. They help us to understand our dependencies, our impacts. With the help of them, we are the first company in India who made the biodiversity policy for biodiversity conservation. We have a target to achieve the no net loss of biodiversity, and that cannot be achieved without the partnership. We have prepared the biodiversity management plan. We have implemented these plans, these initiatives with the help of our partners. And with the help of all these partners, with the help of IUCN, we are able to conserve. We are able to create some water bodies in our across the location. We are able to reclaim, rehabilitate about 500 hectares of the land in which we have operated. We are able to create some of the slag dump, the waste dump, into beautiful eco park. So this is a Juxlai mug dump. You can search about it. We have presented in COP15. So these are the initiatives, just how we can reduce the desertification, how we can conserve the water, how we can enhance the biodiversity, and all these things are the indicator of the SDG 15. So these are the initiatives we have done around and across our locations. Thank you very much.
That's amazing, sir. Thank you so much. Should we be taking questions for the first and the second speaker now, or how is it going to be? Varsha, can you tell me?
Yes, we can take the questions now. Since sir will be leaving.
So do we have questions from the panel, from anybody for Heshmi sir?
I don't think there are any questions.
No, there are no questions.
Yeah.
But
If
sir,
there
it would be great if you can leave your email ID on the chat box, so that if anybody comes up with a question again.
Yeah, I have done.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye. Bye.
It was great to have you. Thank you. Have a nice evening. Bye. Okay, so let's move forward with the third speaker. And that would be Miss Manisha Chaudhary. Hello, Miss Manisha. Hello, welcome.
Hi, Suprati. Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon to everyone.
Very good afternoon, ma'am. It's so good to have you. I'd like to ask you, what can be some of the broad provisions of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, which can be inclusive of the Sustainable Development Agenda of 2030?
Well, this whole post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, which builds on the strategic plan for biodiversity, which ended in 2020, it very much recognizes the need for urgent action at all levels, globally, nationally, regionally, locally, to halt the biodiversity loss. Now, this framework is complementary to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And not only that, but it also takes into account the long-term strategies and targets which are there under various multilateral environment agreements which are related to biodiversity, and also other Rio conventions. So the whole idea is to ensure that synergies across all agreements which are for the planet and people, and achieving the common goal that all the agreements and conventions and the SDG goals are having for living in harmony with nature. So that's a broad agenda. Now, if you go through the entire framework, the draft framework, which is currently there, it's broadly divided into three major sections. The first section is, the one which basically targets on reducing threats to biodiversity. The second section targets to meeting people's needs through sustainable use of biological resources and sharing of benefit, which arises by use of biological diversity. And the third one, which is also the main or rather most important one, is the tools and solutions for implementation and mainstreaming biodiversity. Now, if you see the monitoring framework, which is there, the first draft of monitoring framework or the Global Biodiversity Framework is up there and in public domain, and one can have a look. If you see that framework, all the targets and the goals of the draft framework, the draft Global Biodiversity Framework, is linked to very much all the various targets of SDG and their targets and their indicators. And while there are obvious links with SDG 14 and 15, but there are various other SDGs which are highlighted there and linked to different indicators and targets of the Global Biodiversity Framework, because biodiversity is an area which is not a standalone subject in itself. It cuts across various sectors at various levels. So, for example, if you see the target 7 of the Global Biodiversity Framework, which very much focuses on actions to mitigate and adapt to climate change, and also disaster risk reduction from nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approach, it is directly linked to SDG 13 on climate action. Similarly, if you see target 6 of the framework, it focuses on actions for reducing pollution from all sources. And it is linked to SDG, not only SDG 14, but also very much to SDG 12, which is on sustainable consumption and production. So similarly, we have linkage with nutritional security, food security, livelihoods, health, and well-being for people. So all these are very much linked to other SDGs like SDG 2 on food security, and also on SDGs which is linked to health and well-being. So you can very well see that how the framework is aligned to SDGs, and not only SDGs, but the targets for climate change and climate targets for ecosystem restoration under various other conventions. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so along with this only, since there are no parts in nature, finance is also a part of nature, but how long and how sustainable it is to keep influxing money in restoring biodiversity rather than taking measures to not to disturb it at the first place?
So they are both aspects, and both are needed. I mean, if you, again, I'll go back to the framework, and even the earliest strategic plan for biodiversity had a very exclusive target and goals on financing for nature. This framework also in the draft version, you can see a very specific goal on biodiversity financing, and a target which is exclusively for biodiversity financing. Now, say keep influxing money in nature. It's not I think you should really look into the data. We are not really influxing a lot in nature. See the latest estimates, which which gives a funding gap of nearly US dollars around 598 to 820 billion per year by 2030. That will be the global biodiversity funding gap. Also, the latest report of UNEP on state of finance for nature, it identifies a 4.1 trillion US dollar financing gap in nature by 2050. So certainly we are not influxing enough in nature finance.
At least we talk about it. There is talk of
we talk about it, and we are trying. I'm not saying that nothing is happening. A lot is happening, but more is needed. Currently, if you see, investment in nature-based solution amounts to nearly 133 billion US dollars as of now. So these investments, and as the report says, needs to at least triple by 2030 and increase fourfold by 2050 from the current level. So certainly there's a huge gap that we need to fill, but also linked to it, there is another aspect that we need to focus on to increase the finances for nature, is to also mobilize private resources, private finances for nature. Currently, if you see, nearly 86% of current investments in nature solutions come from public sources. And certainly, this shows that public sector remains the mainstay for biodiversity financing thus far. So the private sector should be bringing in a much larger share for nature finance, and which is also in the sector's own best interest, if I can see so. We understand now, at least the awareness is there, that loss of biodiversity could have significant economic and financial implications, heavily impacting the supply and value chains and the raw materials on which the businesses are depending. Also, if you have seen the latest reports for the past 3 years of the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report, it places biodiversity loss among the top 5 risks to the economy, to the business. So there is a need, and however, a business case is also being built, and there are reports which says that a new nature-based economy can generate around 10 trillion US dollars in business value and can create 390 million plus jobs by 2030. So certainly there is a certain business case, but we need to develop some more business cases. We need to establish a solid case for nature action and financing through private sector. We need to establish that biodiversity is good for business, restoration is good for business, and nature action is crucial for business and economic sustainability. That is that.
Since we still have more time to speak with you.
No, and financing, and this is the global picture that I'm presenting now.
Yes.
How do we go at national level?
So we are talking about macroeconomics right now.
Right.
And if we come down to micro, if we cut down the micro steps.
So what are the steps?
Common people actions.
We will come to common people actions, and the earlier speaker also talked about common people actions. For common people to act, also we need an enabling environment, enabling policies and schemes. And I will not say that it's not there, it's already there. What we need to see is the alignment of the existing policies and schemes with various sectors.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in every country which is party to the CBD is mandated to develop a national biodiversity action plan. India also has a national biodiversity action plan. So, and that is a starting point. So how do you assess that how much India needs in terms of biodiversity financing? So you have a guiding framework, which is the NBAP, the National Biodiversity Action Plan, and you cost that action plan. You identify how much finances are going needed, and hence what's the gap, and then what kind of financial solutions suited to India's need can be identified and implemented through various strategies. So again, talk about what could be. So India has already developed a biodiversity finance plan and identified the gap, which is around $6.5 billion US annually. And this I'm talking only about the public finances at the level and not at the subnational level. So that figure is there with us. And then 12 financial solutions have also been identified on how this funding gap can be bridged. So this source of funding can be generated through various strategies. One, as I said, that there already exists various programs and schemes, and reports say that almost 24 line ministries in India through nearly 116 programs and schemes are contributing to biodiversity conservation or can potentially contribute to biodiversity conservation directly or indirectly. So that mapping already exists. Now, what you do is that you can reduce and redirect resources which are causing harm to biodiversity. Or second option can be you generate additional resources which can fulfill the objectives of the CBD. And you can also enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of already available resources which are there, which are locked in various programs and schemes. For example, if you just pick an example of Ministry of Agriculture, there are various schemes of Ministry of Agriculture which can potentially contribute to biodiversity conservation. And agriculture itself is a area which is directly linked to biodiversity conservation. Erosion of agriculture biodiversity threatens the long-term stability and sustainability of agriculture. So, and there are various areas. I mean, water use, if you say the recycling and reuse of wastewater, which goes into ponds and pools and various water bodies, and thereby harming the biological diversity which is in that aquatic areas. So there are various examples, and earlier speaker already talked about how do we mainstream. And so mainstreaming biodiversity in these public programs and schemes can in itself be one of the big financial solutions to fill the finance gap. But in addition to this, as I said, the private sector has to step up in terms of not only mainstreaming biodiversity in its programs and schemes. There are other channels. So it could be mainstreaming biodiversity in business operations. It can be CSR. It can be extended producer responsibilities. As I said, we already have mechanisms. We just need to review those mechanisms and identify entry points, what and where we can plug in the actions for biodiversity, how we can step up actions through mainstreaming biodiversity through public. But here I will also like to just touch upon how the private sector finances currently are more towards climate finance. Majority of climate finance, nearly around 56% as per the reports, is going into climate finance. Over 4,000 businesses have committed to align their business with business models with 1.5 degrees C and net zero emissions by signing up to the UNFCCC's Race to Zero campaign. So now the thing is that will it happen in a similar fashion for biodiversity and nature? It has to happen, but currently it is not. So we need to build that business case, and we need to clearly map what could be the return on investments. The ROI needs to be clearly built for business. Dr. Hishmi was also saying we need to identify what is the incentive of investing in. So we we can start with some of the key sectors like someone was talking about the food systems, agriculture production, forestry, tourism is another area, eco-restoration in mining areas. These are some of the critical areas that we can start working
on. Yes.
Now, I think the first speaker also touched upon the financial sector. That is definitely going to play a critical role. And Finance Initiative works with a large number of financial institutions, members and partners, basically to see that how biodiversity actions can be mainstreamed in decision making in of financing. And UNEP provides technical research and guidance, working with financial community on cutting edge technology and innovations, and developing industry-wide tools, linking science, policy, economics, and finance, and bringing nature to the heart of financial decision making.
Absolutely. Okay, so we are running a little short of time. Ma'am, can you please send your email ID so that if anybody has questions, if you can drop it in the chat box, because I will come back to you with a lot of questions again. So
sure, I'll do that.
Thank you. So with this, we'd like to move with our next speaker, Dr. Asghar Nawab. And welcome, sir.
Hi, Trivedi.
Hi. Pleasure to have you. And my question would be to you that the sustainable use of water and how we can go towards the conservation of our wetlands, because wetlands is one of the most critical areas. We do have Wetland Protection Act. We do have provisions of protection of wetland from construction, and there are certain set of rights given to the wetland itself. It's known as a body in its own. However, unless it is notified, we cannot do much about it. And you will agree with me that we have more unnotified wetlands than the notified ones. So if you can please elaborate on that.
So, Sukriti, pointing to your question, I understand that there are a lot of conservation and protection policies and several management plans that have been promulgated for the protection of the wetlands and other water bodies. But despite this, there still needs to be synergies drawn with the development goals and the other upcoming global biodiversity framework. So, in fact, if I may elaborate on the sustainable development goals. So, since there are 17 of these development goals, and of these, the SDG 14 and 15, which actually directly relates to the conservation of biodiversity, and which actually addresses life below water and life on land. So if we can actually move beyond the scope of these two SDGs, we may appreciate the fact that biodiversity and wetlands provide countless ecosystem services and resources that are actually directly related to and support a range of societal sectors and economic activities. So, and yet again, to elaborate on this, I would like to walk you through a few sentences where I can actually elaborate on the different ranges of wetland ecosystem services that are addressed by the SDGs. And the first and the foremost is that wetlands serve as a natural refuge and habitat to biodiversity, which is the key for food security, and thus it contributes to the achievement of the SDG 2 on zero hunger. So similarly, if if this chain continues, if there is ample of biodiversity, and if there is no, if there's no shortage of food resources, then we see that biodiversity is immediately drawing a relevant achievement to ending poverty, which then relates to SDG 1. And then similarly, or rather concurrently, it enhances the economic growth, which actually relates to SDG 8. And taking into consideration the wetlands hydraulics, so which actually provides a steady water supply that relates to safe, affordable, and clean drinking water for all. This relates to your SDG 6, 12, and 15 respectively, wherein the ability of wetlands to support a water cycle maintains the groundwater levels, and thus the sustenance of water for a longer duration. So moving again, if we talk about the sustainable management of natural resources, wetlands again have the potential to improve rural socioeconomics. And it's important to note that generally the fisher folk or the forest dwellers or even the small landholders, they often directly depend on the wetland and its resources for their subsistence and livelihoods. So again, this relates to your SDG 10. And looking into the current scenarios of exposures to climate-related effects, nature's wetlands play a wonderful role as nature-based solutions.
Absolutely.
And this actually helps increase the resilience of the vulnerable communities to droughts and floods. So these are few instances where the SDGs and the wetlands conservation and perhaps the biodiversity can draw some immediate synergies. Then also I would like to take this opportunity to stress upon that in these times there is a need to replace the business as usual approach with a more inclusive approach, stressing upon the possible ecosystem services that wetlands provide to articulately address the SDGs and their specific targets. And then it's also crucial that policy makers in various domains must appreciate the efforts of others to establish a network and strive for policy coherence to achieve multiple SDGs. So this is what I would like to
Yes, it is actually observed that whenever communities or indigenous groups or dwellers around the wetlands or forest dwellers would be a different subject, but it's one of the same thing again. I reiterate myself, nature doesn't have parts. But whoever the communities benefiting from that particular area or wetland, it is seen that whenever they have been involved, they utilize the resources, but they also make sure that they're conserving its existence.
Absolutely.
However, any private stakeholder or government stakeholders, unfortunately, have been not very kind towards the existence of the wetlands. And we started this conversation that we do have more non-notified wetlands. And it is also observed that some of the wetlands were not, they were observed as wetlands. They fulfilled all the criteria, yet they were not getting notified because there were projects coming up. So do we need more policies, or do we just need to implement whatever we have?
I think the number of policies that we have, and perhaps the recent amendments in the wetlands conservation and management rules. This and also the NPCA guidelines, that is the National Policy for the Conservation of Aquatic Systems. These are sufficient enough and good enough to take forward the cause of wetlands conservation, as primarily because these two policies and the rules, they have actually decentralized many of the the earlier rules and adherences, and now it is the state which has been given more power to make sure that wetlands are taken care of.
Yes, yes, yes.
At a larger and a
It's
stronger
happening
level.
eventually.
Yes, exactly. And herein, I would actually like to add on that with this 75 years of independence celebration, the Amrit Ka Mahotsav thing, the government, the central government has actually taken up the cause of wetlands conservation, wherein we would be recognizing 75 wetlands as Ramsar sites in India, and perhaps I think a large number being recognized as Ramsar sites than most of the.
Good time for wetlands are coming up.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice.
Absolutely.
That's great. So good to hear your views, sir. And with this, we would please, if you can send your email ID, because I will be personally reaching out to you. So
Absolutely.
We will be
Thank you
moving
once
on to
again.
the next speaker. And it was pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you. Just that we're running a little short of time.
No, I understand.
And Professor Atya Arzu, you are invited to please have the dialogue on the related topic.
Yes, thank you, Sukriti madam, and thank you, Spare India Groups, to giving me an opportunity to discuss as a panel member here. I have no much more ideas about this. There are some eminent personalities are there, like Asghar sir, Afifullah sir, and others. But I will try to give your answers.
Okay, that's great. I think we all are, as the second speaker, Dr.
No, Sukriti madam, you can ask questions. You can ask questions. I will answer you. Okay, no problem.
So, ma'am, I would like to know, we all have, here in India, you really need to get your mic on mute. Please. Okay, thank you. So, ma'am, we are touching bases upon different kind of areas that are interconnected with biodiversity. I will be posing a question on you regarding pollution. And how do you think we can tackle this problem of because pollution is also adding to biodiversity loss, which is like a byproduct of unconscious human practice or conscious human practice, but we don't know what to do. So how can we tackle this? And if you have, if you can enlighten us with your views on this.
Okay, madam, actually, sorry to say that my laptop is not working. So I have joined through my audio only. If you will allow me, then I will share only a slide and discuss with you.
Not a problem. Please go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am. Ma'am, please allow me to share. Allow me to share screen. Yes, ma'am. My screen is disabled for you. See my screen?
Ma'am.
Yes, my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, your screen is visible. It's half visible.
Half visible.
Yes, it's visible. It's fully visible now.
Okay.
And you can start presenting.
Yes, as per your question, I can explain you like this. Nowadays, we are facing a lots of problems. Like the interconnected environmental emergencies like climate change, loss of biodiversity, and pollution, which is need to be addressed together. So we have to do something like that, like some international scientific assessments of that providing knowledge based for inform evidence based decision making. But none of the internationally agreed environmentally targets for climate and biodiversity have been made, and the situation becoming more dire with each passing year. So unless these issues are addressed in the next 5 to 10 years, none of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal will be achieved. So we have to think in mind that we have to think about all the Sustainable Development Goals. Then we can sort out all these problems. In, yes. You can see here there are so many sustainable goals. Out of 17 sustainable goals, 14 are directly or indirectly related to our biodiversity, and the 2030 agenda for sustainable development goal, which is with 17 sustainable development goals, which provides a blueprint for the transformation. So that in international environmental governance structure need to be facilitate a system wide cross-sectoral transformation of humankind relationship with the nature, by which we can change this and we can achieve this target. Ma'am, any other question?
Yes, ma'am. If you can please elaborate on, probably you can pick up one or two solutions or one or two major reasons, if you think it's water pollution or it's air pollution that is causing biodiversity loss on probably micro level, on Indian level.
Okay. As these problems is associated with us, like environmental pollution, how can we
you can
overcome
probably
this?
talk about poor waste management, or how we are not able to implement the waste management policies in our country, because of which the problems are happening. You can elaborate on that, because that's actually an issue. And
okay, ma'am. Ma'am, you can see here in my slide how poor waste management is related to all kinds of pollutions like air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, and it is a major concern that is microbial contamination, which causes different kinds of disease. So we have to think about that, how to sort out this kind of waste and sort out these problems. So always we are saying that government is not implementing this, government is not implementing that, but it is not a right solution, ma'am. But we all knows what to do and what not to do. But
absolutely, we need to start by segregating our own waste.
Yes, of course. We all knows what to do and what not to do, but we are not implementing on this. So first of all, we have to change our attitude. Then we can change the entire world. Otherwise, we can't change it. So for changing this, we have to create awareness among people through school level education, college level education, by which they will be aware about that, and they have to change themselves. Then we can change the entire world. Otherwise, we can't change anyone.
Yes, I think this is one of the most important solutions that you've come up with, that we need to make it a part of the education at the school level.
Yes.
I don't remember studying in school about waste management.
Yes.
We did have moral science, but we didn't have anything related to...
Ma'am, for example, our grandparents, they are throwing waste here and there. But nowadays, a small kid, when he or she eats a chocolate, he is going and searching where is dustbin. I have to throw these wrappers. Similarly, we have to change our attitude. No one can change this.
Absolutely. I think this is perfect. This is a very good solution you've come up with. Education is one of my favorite areas as well. And with this, we will be moving forward with our last speaker of the day, Dr. Shivam S Trivedi. I would like you to come on, share your screen, sir, and please share your views on the... Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Hi. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So again, there is a talk of the town, green economy, this is actually a very new thing, ESG, green economics, green finance. So, but it's coming from the side of the investors. Investors would want to invest in startups or companies who are more interested in, who are doing something related to sustainability. Or if they're not, then they will ask them, what is your decarbonization plan? Or where is your ESG report? So do you feel that this was my question posed to the second speaker also, and he answered it beautifully. I will be asking a slightly different question, that should it be made a legal provision, because it's still a voluntary compliance in India. And should it be made legal? Should it be implemented? Because and what are the pros and cons of making it legal, making green finance or green economy legal?
Yeah, thank you for this question, Sukriti. So, to answer this, I would like to say that, in 1970s and 70s and 80s, we did not have green economy as a focus of, our legal, system. But then we unknowingly, we did touch the green economy, through our, say, Wildlife Protection Act. Absolutely. We had the Environment Protection Act. We had, the Air and Water Protection Act. So, but majorly they were, a check system to keep that, there are no violations made.
Yes, Air and Water Pollution Act or EPA are still compliances from the State Pollution Control Board, administrative compliances.
Haan. So
and pecuniary punishment hi milta hai unme. So.
Haan. Then, then came the word that, the report that sparked up the word sustainable development. So that was, the Brundtland report on our common future. That came in, I think, 1987. And in the same decade, we also had John Elkington coming up with the triple bottom line approach. What Dr. Hishmi said, that, environment, economy, and the society. So the triple bottom line approach focused on the same thing. Then, in 1990s, I would say the focus on green economy was centered through the Kyoto Protocol, which talked about the climate change and what measures have to be taken to reduce the climate change and global warming. And then it started with in 1996, I think we started drafting the Biological Diversity Act, which finally came out in 2002. And it was after the 2000, our focus on green economy got a very a center picture. We had this Swachh Bharat mission, we had smart cities, we had as Nawab Saad said, we had the wetland, the Ramsar site, and the wetland rules and regulation 2017. So the focus on green economy has widened. It is impacting in a direct and an indirect way both. Okay, we have the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, which talks about providing LPG cylinders to the rural areas. So the burden on fossil fuel usage or fossil fuel consumption is reduced. So that is again adding up to the green economy. Now, you also said that you are interested in the education part. If you have read the National Education Policy 2020, it talks about, the environment education was brought into the picture several years ago, but then in this Education Policy 2020, it also talks about biodiversity conservation, natural resource management, and climate change. So, at a national level, the focus on green economy is definitely widening. And currently, yes, it is a voluntary, but as we go on, definitely, it will become a mandatory thing. Just to give you an example that, before 2010, corporate social responsibility was a voluntary thing. But if I'm not wrong, in 2002 amendment of Ministry of Corporate the Companies Act, CSR was mandatory. And again, there was an amendment in 2014, which wherein they had incorporated words such as natural resource conservation. in the CSR, in the list of activities that,
Yes.
where CSR companies can do that. Now, recently, the business responsibility and sustainability reporting system has also incorporated very few, but peripheral measures about how the company's activity is impacting the biodiversity. It's not in detail, but yes, with this advancement, things will again come down to mandatory things like
Absolutely.
the Global Reporting Initiative has a complete set of parameters on biodiversity. But one thing is currently these parameters focus on how companies are using natural resources. Maybe say after 2-3 years, we can also see a reporting system where it says that how companies are boosting up natural capital.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, it has to be meant legal, but then in a way that it should not compromise with the rights of the development, the economic development, because that is also a crucial part of any country.
Absolutely. Because companies will be able to, especially with startups and MSMEs, they will be new gen startups are pretty conscious, and right from day one, we are not the Jugadu generation, and we are more towards right from day one compliances are always in our head, and we always make sure that nothing is improper from our end. Paperwork has to be proper and everything. On ground realities have to be proper. So, but then still, at the end of the day, if the company is not making profits, the investor, no matter how finicky they are about ESG, they would want where are the rising numbers? Where is the steadiness? I don't want stark sharp. I've worked with investors like that. They say themselves, I don't want steep numbers, but I want steady numbers. And some companies were not able to show it because they were very fair in their wages. They sourced the material from good vendors who did not give them many discounts. So these are very micro economic issues. And how can we make sure that when we talk about sustainability, it means holistic growth. So economy has to grow. Economy and biodiversity basically are friends, they're not foes. How can we make them come together on basically from small to policy level?
Okay, so
if you have any suggestions for startups, for MSMEs?
Yeah. So, I would like to throw the light on the Biological Diversity Act. It is, India is one of the very few countries, or I won't mind saying that it is one of the only country which has, a best Biological Diversity Act. The three major components, that talks about, or, that the Act talks about is, one is the BMC, that is the Biodiversity Management Committees. So that talks about the governance part of biodiversity. The second part you have is the PBR, that is People's Biodiversity Register, which talks about documentation of natural resources that are existing. And the third part is the ABS mechanism, that is the access and benefit sharing mechanism. So the question that you said, that the medium and small scale enterprises and the startups, so definitely they can jump into the ABS mechanism where a sustainable consumption and conservation is initiated.
There's a benefit sharing model.
Yes, where the Biodiversity Management Committee is also getting benefit. And in return, the natural resources that are existing, are also conserved. Now, this act, there are several avenues where various different stakeholders can also jump into. Like, it's not just the duty of the government or the National Biodiversity Authority or the State Biodiversity Board to manage the biodiversity management committees. It can be also corporates who can support the biodiversity management committees in in conservation of the resources through their CSR funds. It can be also the NGOs and the education institutes who can have this capacity building of the biodiversity management committees, and teach them how to manage the the ABS system or the excess and benefit sharing system, how to manage the PBRs and how to conserve the natural resources.
Yes.
So there are a lot of avenues. So, to sum up, I would say that we definitely require a strong whole institution approach where, the duties are narrowed down to a single citizen and, widen up to a community as a country as a whole community, a single community. I would also like to bring here is, many of you must heard about the Great Law of Peace. Okay, so that was, that was drafted or developed by 5 Native American communities long back, somewhere around, I think, in 1400s. And that law, one of the guideline of that, the Great Law of Peace said that before implementing any new initiative, its impacts on the 7th coming generation should be studied.
Wow.
So just imagine the thinking that, our, I would say, long ancestors had, or the vision that our ancestors had. So if only a part of it we can incorporate, I would definitely say that we can, at a regional level, at a national level, as well as at a global level, we can conserve our natural capital. Thank you.
I think that was quite insightful. This is you've provided some really spot on solutions, and this is great. And with this, we come to the end of this 1.5 hour session. I would personally like to name and thank all the panelists who took time off from their busy schedules. Professor Afif Khan, thank you so much. Dr. Jamil Hussain, he's not here. And Miss Manisha Chaudhary, again, your with respect to macroeconomics, I think you've provided some really good solutions. Dr. Asghar Nawab, it was great to have a conversation on wetlands. Wetland is my personal favorite topic because it's very underground, and it's now that it's coming up, it's just amazing how government is taking initiatives and scientists like you are getting recognized. Dr. Atia Arzu, so thank you so much for bringing light to the fact that education, we need to have statutory mandatory subjects on solid waste management. And Dr. Shivam S Trivedi, thank you so much on bringing light to the very niche issue of public biodiversity registers and the benefit sharing model that is required when it comes to MSME, the growth of MSMEs and startups who are working towards sustainability. I think this is, I completely, it's a revision for me. And now, Varsha, it's all up for you to take it forward. Thank you again, all of you.
So on behalf of Spare India, I would like to thank all the speakers who have given their time and their valuable contribution today for today's session, and especially to Ms. Sukriti Kashyap for moderating the session beautifully and interactively. And so now we'll just end the session, and in case of any query or any question that anyone have, they can just put it in the chat box and we can come up with the answers and share. We can also hold another session on a similar topic in near future. So thank you, everyone.
But I think people had questions for Dr. Afifullah Khan in the beginning. And I think people should ask it because I think doctor is available. And he has some extremely insightful information to give. Any questions for any of the panelists? Anybody? We can wait for a minute or two. You can frame your questions. I think they can unmute and ask.
Unmute them.
Most of us urbanites have. Okay, there is one. What food are you buying? Most of us urbanites here. who do not grow this food buy it from the same villagers who are destroying the biodiversity. So it's very important that we, okay, this is not a question, this is a statement.
Yes.
Anybody questions? Okay, I think all the speakers have given their, Dr. Afifullah, have you given your email ID?
Yes, yes, please. I have given mine.
Okay.
Yes.
It's rediffmail.com one, right?
Yes, it is
Afifullah
ready.
Rediff.
Yes, it is ready.
Anybody who has questions, please ask them. Or all the email IDs are available. Please write to them and please make yourself aware regarding biodiversity. It's because of biodiversity, our existence is there and it can come in at stake if we do not enhance it, protect it, whatever we think. So there is one. Mr. Kenneth. Do you have any question, Mr. Kenneth? Okay. Okay, no problem. Nobody seems to be.
There are no questions. Yeah. So
I will be
thank
coming
you.
in contact with all the speakers. So do expect me in your email IDs. Thank you. Okay.
I must thank you, Sukriti, and the organizers also for a wonderful talk show, rather. It is good to have all of you here, and we have really done good job of moderating the session and coming it to or bringing it to an end successfully. So I must thank you from the side of panelists.
Yes, sir. So with
Thank
respect
you,
to
sir.
the urban and the rural biodiversity front, that I will be getting in touch with you. So,
Sure.
okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Bye.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.